The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hello, welcome to Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, Scott Kemper. With me, as always, is Michael Patrick Hicks.
Hello.
And Matt Brandenburg.
What's up, creeps?
In Staring into the Abyss, we like to talk about all things horror-related, horror fiction, horror movies, and just have a general discussion and share our love about horror to you beautiful, beautiful creeps out there.
And you are all beautiful people.
You're all creeps, too, but we still love you.
And creeps.
If you're creepy, we like you more.
Yes.
But a good
I don't know if you want to put it like that, Michael.
Yeah, I mean like a good creepy kind of way, not like a weird hiding in the bushes leering at me kind of creepy.
Like our Twitter handle creepy.
Yeah. Just a lot of staring. Those abyssal creepy gazes.
Exactly. Our episode today is going to be about the classic Shirley Jackson story, The Possibility of Evil. And before we get into the story...
It's a fun story. Sorry.
It is a fun story. Before we get into the story, we'd like to talk about what we've been reading, what we've been watching, what we've been consuming, both horror-related and sometimes not horror-related. And I did a lot of movie watching yesterday.
Lucky.
So the first movie I saw was Ready or Not.
Oh, what did you think of that one?
I loved it. I thought it was so much fun.
It was.
I love the practical effects. It was tense when it needed to be. It was funny about almost all the way through. I had a smile on my face.
Yes.
It's just a really solid horror comedy.
Yeah, it was good. There's some spots. So now that we've both, or all of us have seen it, I wish, and we like to spoil things, I wish they would have.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Yeah, went a little darker at parts. Like, I mean, it was pretty dark, but I feel like they were there was a couple times where I felt like they were setting up that she was like in on some of this, or like maybe not in on it. What I wished was that she was part of that, like she was the child of that demon or something like that, and she came back for revenge. I thought that would have been fun, just because like it just felt, I don't know. I love the story. I thought it was a great movie. I just think they could have took it in some other places than they did.
That would have been a fun twist. I was talking to someone yesterday about Ready or Not, and they told me that they loved the movie until the ending, and they hated the twist of the ending because it was so predictable.
Yeah.
But when I was talking to them, I was like, the way they had the story up, you either had cliche A or cliche B, because they didn't set the story up any other way to get into a different ending other than two cliches you could choose from. And I think they chose the cliche that worked best for the story.
Yeah, I didn't have any qualms. I thought it was a fun, very gory ending.
Oh, yeah. It was hilarious.
Totally. I loved it. I loved all the explosions.
The one-liner that Samara Weaving delivers at the very end of the film just absolutely killed me. When the cops come up to her and they ask her what happened, she just looks at it and she goes, "In-laws." That was fucking great.
I also, unrelated to horror, I found out that the director of the movie, or one of the directors, one of the parts that won like half of Radio Silence, he used to play guitar for one of my favorite ska bands.
Really? Which one?
Link 80.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
And there's other movies you always have like, because I remember seeing like other movies Radio Silence did before, and there's always like either like an Alkaline Trio song on the soundtrack, or like some other stuff that ties back to Asian Man Records.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So I'm like, it's just a nod to like his past life,
his roots.
What about you, Michael? Anything from this last week?
I have a question for you about Ready or Not, because it was a scene that kind of got me squirming. What did you think of when she's coming out of the well and hits that nail?
Oh God, I squirmed pretty bad during that.
That was rough.
That one hit me pretty good. And I knew it was coming. It was so forecast. I just kept waiting, and it still got me cringy.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a really, that got me good.
That whole falling into that pit of bones, that was pretty gross.
Yeah. Samara Weaving was so good in that.
Yeah, she did a really good job.
She's a really good actress.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I really enjoyed it. I loved everything about it. I wish things, like I said, I wish they would have gone in a little bit of a different direction or played with it a little bit more, made it more evil. I also would have loved to seen stuff like the one brother-in-law mentions having to play old maid. Like, I think that would have been a fun, like, little twist of like, oh, they had to play against a demon or something like that. And it's like, well, how do you do that? But either way, it's a great movie. And it was cool to see something kind of fresh and new come out, especially I think because it came out in August. So it was kind of nice to not have like a franchise horror movie come out. So
agreed. Want to say one thing, Michael, or do you want me to keep on going?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do mine. I didn't watch any movies or TV shows, which meant I was able to read 2 books this week. So the first one that I read was a nice and short horror title, True Crime by Samantha Kolesnik from Grindhouse Press.
That book is so good.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah, I've been seeing this everywhere. What's the deal with it?
So it is, in its opening chapters, you can kind of get a read on the kind of Jack Ketchum influences that went into this, but then it spirals out from there. So if you take kind of that initial premise of the girl next door, where she's growing up in this super abusive household with a psychotic mother who is mentally and physically abusing her on a daily basis, violently, verbally abusive, and sexually abusive, it ends up being about more of a discovery and a coming of age tale of somebody whose mind has been so twisted as a child from the things that she's experienced growing up with this very highly, supremely toxic relationship with her mother. Her and her brother escape. So it's kind of like, what if the girl in The Girl Next Door had lived and was able to get out and create a life, but was so ruined by the experiences that she's had that she doesn't know how to view life except through the filter of violence and hate.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
It sounds like a tough one.
It's a very happy book.
No, not. It's very dark.
It's really dark.
So her and her brother hit the road, and they basically go on a murder spree because that's how she is trying to discover herself. She's trying to find her place in the world and figure out how to not be the victim, but she always ends up being somebody's dog, is the way she views herself.
Yeah.
So she's either her mother's toy or her relationship with her brother. She begins to question that dynamic and why he is protecting her. It goes into a few different directions that are all very grim, but it's very good. It is a really well-crafted book. It's a very dark read. It's not an easy read, but it's certainly not as brutal as Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door. Although there are some corollaries between the two works, this is kind of a response to that book. But it doesn't go into such, I guess you could say, nihilistic directions, although there is certainly some nihilism in here, but it isn't as much of a gut punch. It doesn't make you hate the world and everyone in it as much as Ketchum's The Girl Next Door. But it does try. It tries its best, and it does really well at it. Yeah, it's good. It's
a really, really good book. It's one of the best books. Well, it's the first 2020 book I've read. And so far, so you can look forward to the next horror books coming out in 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, if this is a benchmark for what's to come over the rest of 2020, I think we're going to have a very fulfilling year.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that sounds pretty intense.
So let's turn it over to you, Matt. What have you been up to?
Well, let's see. I have continued reading The Reddening, which we're going to be talking about soon, I know, but it is just the one thing I'll say before I'll move on to other stuff is that Adam Neville did this thing where, and I don't know how far you guys are in. I think, Scott, you'd finished it.
Yeah, I finished it.
So like halfway through the book, things happen where I'm like, where can he go from here? but he's going there. So anyway, we'll talk more about that soon. But I'm really enjoying that one a lot, and I'm excited to kind of get in a deeper discussion. I started reading To Rouse Leviathan, so Matt Cardin, and I'm only 3 or 4 stories in, but it's so good. I know you've read that one, Scott.
It's amazing.
I'm trying to, like, the way he writes it, like, none of his, like, his words don't, there's not like a hook that stops you. The words flow so well that you're just going through and you can't stop. You have to keep reading. And he's dealing kind of with this religious horror, weird horror. For those who don't know him, he's one of the co-editors for Vestarian with John Padgett. So, he's doing a lot of that Thomas Ligotti kind of weirdness, and it's definitely in here, but he's also pulling kind of from his background. And I can't really remember too much of his background on that. I think he studied theology. No, I think he studied theology, but I think maybe he was also in the church. I don't know. Maybe, Scott, you can help with that one.
He studied theology in college.
Okay.
I think he has his PhD, maybe. I know he's still a Christian. Like, he's still, like, he balances, like, this religion aspect and, like, the nihilistic horror really well.
Yes. Yeah. So it's really good. It's really dark, very existential on what's happening. So I'm kind of savoring it, reading one story a day from it, and I'm really enjoying it. And then, unrelated to horror, but we've talked about the TKO Press, their graphic novels, and I burned through 7 Deadly Sins, which it was an amazing brutal Western story. The artwork I really enjoyed. I think it's a unique style. I was reading a little bit online, and some people either really liked it or some people hated it. I liked it. I enjoyed it. But it's not really horror at all, but it's very brutal and violent, and just a fun romp through territories and prisoners doing bad things. So that has been my life.
Well, continuing on my movies, I decided to watch the movie Villains yesterday.
Who did that one?
I forget the director right now, but it stars Bill Skarsgård.
Okay.
And the dude from Burn Notice.
Yes. Jeffrey Donovan. It stars them. I loved Burn Notice.
Me too.
Did you ever watch, I think it was Touching Evil? He was in that.
I saw a few episodes. I think that got canceled really early on, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a little. I think it was a series before, like it was a show they remade. I think it was from, like, I don't know, Sweden or something like that. But, like, he couldn't feel, or he could feel, but he had no, like, filter, so he would just say what he thought, and so that was fun. And he ended up, like, befriending, like, a serial killer or something like that. So maybe it was just too dark for people.
Probably.
Possibly.
It was before its time, I think. It would probably get along pretty good nowadays.
Yeah, probably.
But, so, this movie is between the 2 Bill Skarsgård horror projects that came out last year.
What was the other one?
The one you should see is It Chapter 2.
There's too many Skarsgårds.
The one you should see is Villains, because It Chapter 2 was disappointing, to be generous. So Villains is like, you have Bill Skarsgård and his girlfriend, and they're kind of like amateur, like, thieves and criminals. They rob a gas station, their car breaks down, they find a house that's, like, off the main road, isolated. They break inside to, like, steal shit. And then they find something and end up being captured by the homeowners who don't want that thing escaping.
I remember the trailer now. That looked amazing.
It was hilarious and fucked up and dark, like, all together in one.
Like, it reminded me maybe like a reverse Funny Games.
It kind of is a reverse Funny Games. It's not as nihilistic as Funny Games is, though.
It looks sweet.
It's really good, and it's really funny. It had me laughing through most of it. I watched all the horror comedies this week.
I have never heard of this movie. I'm going to have to look it up.
It's really good. It flew under the radar. It's a fantastic film.
Now, is it on Shudder or Prime or Netflix?
I paid $6 to rent it on Amazon, but it was worth it.
I need to try and watch more movies this year.
What about you, Michael? Anything else, or should I keep on going?
The only other thing that I read was Whiskey and Other Unusual Ghosts by S.L. Edwards.
I heard that was really good.
It was really good. It's a debut collection of short stories, and it's very much, I think, touches on why you need to be empathetic to write good horror. And in this collection, there's actually, the horror elements are pretty subdued, but as a whole, the collection is very emotionally engaging and very emotionally driven. There's a lot of stories in here that are dealing with things like depression. There's some PTSD, a lot of regret going on in these stories. There's stories about ex-military. I think one is like a brutal, somewhere like the Latin American countries, who was like not a dictator, but a very brutal military leader who is kind of beginning to regret maybe not so much regret his past, but the way it might impact his children, which was a really interesting angle to go through. Very eloquently written. I think this collection has some of the best first sentences of any story that I've seen in a long, long time. Edwards is really able to be concise and just really hook you and drag you into a story in very short order. A lot of these stories open up with a really dynamic first sentence, and then you're just really struck by, well, where the hell is this going to go from here? Like one of them opens up, there's a story called We Will Take Half, and the first sentence is, Miguel held the sad, pale remains of his second child in his hands.
Oh, damn.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like, where the fuck is this thing going to go from there? If that's how this story opens, what the hell comes next? And with a title like We Will Take Half, and that's your opening line, you got to wonder what is going on here.
Yeah.
And what's he going to do? And Edwards is very effective at showing you what the connection is between the story and the title and how that plays out. There's another story that I thought was really good that's early in the collection called I've Been Here a Very Long Time, which puts a neat little twist on those usual childhood fears about the monster in the closet. And being an evil monster, it's what if the monster loves the boy and will carry out whatever he wishes for. And the kid keeps thinking of things that will make him happy, but then it layers in all of those unintended consequences and how those things can be twisted into dark ways. Like he asks for a very simple wish that his parents would just stop fighting. And then he wakes up the next morning and his parents, it's a very different dynamic than what he's used to. And it goes into some crazy directions from there. So, yeah, overall, I'd say a really good collection. If you look at the blurbs, Scott, you probably have seen the blurbs. I mean, we've got an introduction from Gwendolyn Keist, who also blurbs it. Blurbs from our favorites, Matt Bartlett, John Padgett, Nadia Balkin. You know, we've had all three of those on the show previously. And when you get a list of blurbs like that from those authors, I get very giddy. So I need to see what's going on with this book, that you've got these kind of people that I really, really enjoy telling me how good this book is. It's like, well, yeah, now I got to sit down and read this fucking thing. And I was very, very happy with this one. It's a great collection.
Awesome.
What was it called again?
Whiskey and Other Unusual Ghosts.
Who put it out?
Gehenna and Hinnom.
Nice. They're kind of coming back, right? I feel like I kickstarted them like a year ago.
Yeah, I think I did see a thing not too long ago about them being able to fulfill some Kickstarter stuff. I didn't dig too deeply of it. I wasn't familiar with the publisher prior to Sam.
They were a weird publisher. They did a magazine, and then something happened, and then so they came out with the Kickstarter maybe a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and it went through. It was successful. And I think I got like one issue from them, and then they kind of went dark, and everyone started wondering. I think there were some questions up on the Horror Writers Association Facebook page, and I think it came out where they want it to. I mean, like, obviously they still want to fulfill everything, but there was like some personal issues that popped up in one of their lives, and so they couldn't get to it right away. But they pretty much promised, I think by the end of last year, that they're coming back. Which is good because a lot of us gave them money, and so we kind of want to see something good come out of that. Plus, from what I've read, at least that one issue, they do a really good job. They're a really good weird magazine publisher. So I'm hoping they come back soon so we can start reading more of their stuff. And it at least sounds like they're putting out they are putting out some books, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, this released back in July 2019. So hopefully we'll be seeing more from them.
Do you have any more, Michael, or should I just take the rest? Because I have a little bit more, and then I'm done.
Yeah, it's all on you, man. I got nothing else.
All right. So continuing on from movies, I ended up watching Train to Busan.
Oh, that's a good one.
Which I'd never seen before.
Really?
Really.
I'm surprised that flew under your radar.
It didn't fall under my radar. It's just it came out at a time where I do not care about anything zombie related.
Yeah.
So because I was so burnt out at zombies, it's like, here's the Korean zombie movies. And I'm like, I like Korean movies. I don't give a shit about zombies right now. So I'm just not going to watch it. Like, that was my mindset when it came out. So I decided to watch it last night. I loved it.
Good. Well, that'll be a good prep for you for the 19th Walking Dead series that's coming out.
And movies.
It was a really, really good movie. Very emotional. Very tense. All around, just really, really good. I got tearied out a bit near the end because those goddamn Koreans know how to really, really get those heartstrings moving.
Okay, that's good.
Oh, we're going to be canceled.
All right, Grandpa, what are you going to say?
I wasn't anything bad about the Koreans. Koreans are great. Korean movies.
Somebody is just going to take that sound clip of you with the goddamn Koreans, and it's going to be a hashtag, and everyone's going to cancel us. We're going to have the internet warriors crashing our gates, demanding that we're canceled.
So I'm a really big fan of Korean.
And then you'll end up hosting the Grammys or something. Everyone will love you again.
Oh, fuck that, dude.
We're going to do our own Ricky Gervais here. I
really do love Korean cinema. And I feel like Korean cinema, they'll have these like really intense horror thrillers, but they'll still have that emotional punch that I feel like many other cultures kind of don't focus on. But Korean cinema is really good at getting like that like emotional punch in. Like, have you guys seen like the Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance?
No.
Nope.
Or Old Boy?
I did see Old Boy.
I have heard of Old Boy.
Lady Vengeance?
I've heard of that one.
I wanted to, because it's like there's a trilogy of the Vengeance trilogy or whatever.
Yeah, Old Boy's the second one. The first one's Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and the third one's Lady Vengeance. Out of the three, Mr. Vengeance is actually, like, I think the darkest. It's just so bleak and hopeless, and like it's a hard watch. Old Boy's the most famous one because of the twist and because of the hammer scene and all that stuff. Lady Vengeance nobody talks about, but Lady Vengeance is also really, really dark. But I don't know. I'm a big Korean cinema fan. This was really good. I want to watch his animated prequel, because the director did a prequel too.
Yeah.
Called Soul Station.
Yeah, it's supposed to be really good.
And then he's working on a sequel, apparently, which I'll be interested in when it comes out. If it comes out. Besides that, I read the second trade of Ice Cream Man, which is becoming one of my favorite horror comics. And it also leads me, like similar to what Michael has said, to write good horror, you need to have empathy. And like the stories in this like really highlight that. Like, I'm not going to spoil anything. I don't want to spoil anything because I want us to read this. But one issue. So Ice Cream Man, if you're not familiar, each issue is a short story. And they're only connected by the character of the Ice Cream Man. And they'll have like little Easter eggs or references, but overall each issue works as a standalone. And one issue has a guy order a 3-scoop ice cream. This issue has no dialogue. He walks up to the Ice Cream Man, buys 3 scoops, walks away, starts eating. And then the comic goes into 3 different colors. A top panel, a middle panel, and a bottom panel. And each panel is a different color. And in the top panel, it tells the story of him meeting a woman. He drops the ice cream. They meet eye to eye. They go on a date. They fall in love. They get married. And it follows that life. On the second panel, he finds a stray dog, drops his ice cream, takes the dog in, and it details his life with this dog that he found. The third one, he keeps on eating the ice cream, and the bottom scoop has, like, worms and bugs and shit in it. And then he ends up being stalked by this man who kidnaps him. And you just keep on turning the pages to follow these 3 parallel narratives, and it's like the 3 different paths that his life will go down, or would go down. It's experimental and weird, but it was really cool.
That's awesome.
And then there's another one in this issue where a little girl has her best friend died of bone cancer. And now her best friend is her imaginary friend. And her parents think that she's schizophrenic or something's wrong with her because she keeps on referring to like her best friend as being there. And it just like goes through you reading about this little girl unpacking her trauma about losing her best friend.
Sounds intense.
And it's just really good empathy, really good horror. There's a clown funeral. There's paramedics, EMT ambulance drivers who are popping pills and all this crazy shit's happening around them. There's one issue where like this guy the first issue of this volume has a guy committing suicide by jumping off of his skyscraper that he works in and just narrating his fall as like people inside the skyscraper just go to shit. Like it just goes all over the place, but it's really cool.
Nice.
And then besides that, I read the 3rd volume of the Dollhouse Family, the Hill House Press comic.
That's right. Okay. How was that?
Fantastic. I'm going to read the new one that came out this week today. I haven't read it yet, but I picked it up yesterday. And then I started reading the new John Bassett novel, The Lantern Man.
And?
It's really good. It's very different from what we discussed from him in the past.
Okay.
Well, Lantern Man, so what it is, it's an interesting narrative. It starts off with a newspaper of this girl being found burned to death in a cabin. And then you turn the page and it presents a police inquiry report or incident report where the police officer who was investigating like the fire and her death is writing about this, saying like in her death, all that was found was her skeletal remains with the soles of her tennis shoes burned into her feet. And the whole cabin was burned down. The only thing saved was her notebook that had the Lantern Man written on the front of it. And the notebook is her life from her perspective. And then there's a bunch of footnotes as you read it, which is like the policeman's commentary about people he's interviewed or giving actual facts if she's presenting a falsehood from this Ben's perspective. And so the rest of the book is like you reading her journal with this extra policeman's commentary about the case and stuff.
I like that. That's a fun style to do it in.
And I'm only in the beginning, but so far it's really good. It's kind of like his take on like an urban legend, where it's like kind of like an urban legend type story.
Cool.
Nice.
And then I'm going to start the first John Connolly novel because fucking Michael and E won't stop talking about John Connolly. So I caved in. I borrowed the first John Connolly novel from the library, and I'll see where that goes.
You were in for a good time. I will say that is a series that gets better and better and better with each successive book, and it keeps getting better for a good long while.
Does it get kind of cosmic horror-y, or does it kind of stay like murder mystery horror?
The latest one that he just released, which I need to look up the title.
Is it the Bones one? Yeah,
A Book of Bones does get into some slight cosmic horror elements at, well, I won't say where, but there is a touch of it.
All right, I'm down for that.
But you've got like 20 books to go before you get to that one. And it's definitely a series. Yeah, you want to read these books in order because he does so much development with the characters and their relationships and the things that happen. He does structure them in kind of like a story arc kind of way. I think like the first arc, when he started writing this, he wasn't intending to do this storyline for 20 some years. So I think it had originally crafted it with like book 5 or 6 was intended to be the last one.
Okay.
But I guess the publisher probably gave him a ton of money and he got some other ideas. So it kept going, and it has not gotten stale for me yet after 20 some books, which I cannot say that about a lot of series that I've read where you can be 20 some books into it and still going and still keep my interest. But Connolly definitely has. I love the character Charlie Parker, and I love his friends Lewis and Angel, who are a pair of they're gay hitmen.
Nice.
That's pretty awesome.
They're awesome. Angel is a thief, and his lover Lewis is an assassin, and they just have this amazing dynamic that they are personality-wise such polar opposites. And then you have Parker thrown into the mix, and Connolly writes some really hilarious dialogue between the three of them. Take all the supernatural stuff, take the murder stuff away. You could give me a book that's just nothing but those three characters sitting at a bar and bullshitting, and I would fucking love it because they have such a great dynamic. They are a really powerful trio together. They're great. So I'm very, very happy that you're reading this, and I hope you stick with it.
Well, we'll see how it goes. But So far, that's been my week. I just binged a lot of shit yesterday because I had such a hectic week at work that I just laid in my bed and just watched horror all day long.
Understandable.
Yes. But yeah, besides that, that's about my week. I think we're ready to get into the main meat of our episode.
Let's do it.
Hospital of Evil by Shirley Jackson, which I had all my students read in school, and no one seemed to really care about it, which made me sad because I love the story.
It's a really funny story.
It is. Shirley Jackson is a really funny writer, and I don't think she gets enough credit for her humor.
I think we look at like some people look at like the one or two stories, two or three books that she's got out, and they see them as somewhat horror, and they don't look at some of her other stuff, which is much more twisted and fun and goofy. I mean, there's definitely a twist. Like, I mean, it definitely ends kind of like, oh crap, this one. But yeah, it's a fun kind of satirical look at a small town and an old lady that sort of secretly runs this town.
Yes. Well, before we continue, I know Matt's read Shirley Jackson before. Have you encountered Shirley Jackson before, Michael?
I have not.
So this is your first short story from her?
Yeah, it was.
I'm surprised. Usually the lottery, like, a lot of us read when we're younger.
Yeah.
My school did not have us read good stuff. Or at least stuff that kind of fit in my niche. I think the only thing that we read over the course of high school that I did like was Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World.
That's a good book.
We never read The Lottery. There's a lot of stuff that people tell me that we read in high school that my high school never had us read that. We read The Great Gatsby and had a big quiz about what the color of his car was.
Oh, fuck that. Fuck that.
Yeah, I thought that was a really unimportant detail, but the teacher I had made it into a very big production. That was an hour and a half of a lecture about how important the color of his car was and what that means and how it relates. And I failed that test because I didn't remember what color his car was because I was looking more at the story, which apparently was really fucking stupid of me.
You gotta look at the symbolism. Come on.
Yeah.
Was it blue?
I don't know. I think it was
I don't know.
yellow, maybe. I don't know. I just made up.
I think the car's yellow.
Yeah. I think it was yellow. I did not write yellow. I probably picked another color. But fuck that. So yeah, I did not like The Great Gatsby.
You should try The Great Gatsby again sometime. It's a really good book.
Maybe, but I have a lot of bad memories about that one now. Being called out in front of the class because I didn't know the color of the car, and what a loser I am. So
you were pelted with stone.
Yeah, basically I was. Well, I don't have a lot of good memories of The Great Gatsby, and in general, high school lit classes.
Speaking of losers, we know how Miss Strangeworth feels about the people in the town who she lives with.
Yeah, she's a fucking bitch. I do not like Miss Adelia Strangeworth at all.
That name is just perfect.
It really is. So
busybody. Cretinous neighbor. Oh, I hate people like this.
So pretty much Miss Strangeworth is a woman who presents herself to be this kind, sweet old woman who's a giant cunt behind closed doors.
Yeah, she has a giant heart of dirt.
She is an internet troll.
She is. Yeah,
she is.
Very pre-internet. This is what the trolls on the internet did before the internet. They wrote snotty letters to strangers accusing them of all of these horrible things and turning everyone against one another.
Anonymously.
She thinks she owns this town because her grandfather built the first house there, and God, she's just such a bitch.
Which is one of the first things to learn about her is that she knows everybody in town, and she owned the town because her grandfather built the first house.
We don't know if she actually owned the town. She says she does. Oh. Yeah.
Oh, really? She acts like she does.
Yeah. She thinks
and because like her grandfather built the first house, she's like, my family was the first family here, therefore my family is the most important family here.
Yeah, but they wouldn't build a statue of her grandfather. They picked somebody else to make a statue in the town center, and she's been carrying a grudge about that for like 70-some years.
Yeah. So the story opens with just Miss Strangeworth going about her day. She goes to the supermarket or the grocery store to just buy some things.
And this is where you start getting so when you get the first bit of it, you're just hearing about this old lady and she walks around and she talks to new people and she's got these roses. And then, when she gets into the grocery store, you start noticing people acting just a little off, a little nervous around her.
Yeah. And I don't know. Well, I don't think at that point, I think probably they just don't like her in general. I'd imagine she is the type of neighborhood busybody that everybody talks about behind her back and just doesn't want to deal with. But I don't think they are aware of the extent of her deprivations.
No, definitely not.
Oh.
They do not like her, which I liked about that part of the story. I liked that everyone is just kind of, they're playing
cautious
nice.
About her.
Yeah, they play nice to her, but right away there's something off, and they don't care for her, and for good reason, because, like I said, she's a bitch.
So one thing I liked, she's such a bitch.
Oh, she's horrible. What a nasty little woman.
Well, and to go with that, which is the story's it's third person, but it's definitely the camera's focused on her. Yeah. And so like you're getting her thoughts, and so she, like, when she's talking to the grocery store owner, like, we're seeing, and she's like, oh, he looks very tired, and like you're starting to see like these little thoughts of like, oh, well, this person's acting like this because they're not carrying themselves the right way, or they didn't take care of themselves. And so, like, not only is she noticing them acting, you know, their hands are shaking and just the way they're hesitating and stuff like that, but she's putting something on it, which plays later into the story. But it's fun to again go with her acting this way. Is like she's looking instantly at the bad, like, oh, well, they're just not taking care of themselves.
Yeah. Yes. One thing I do like, though, like, this is still in the beginning when she's at the grocery store and she's saying good morning to Mr. Lewis. It's just like, I just love the way Shirley Jackson talks about like small town people and like daily pleasantries. Yeah. Where it's like, and good morning to you, Mr. Lewis, Miss Strangeworth said at last. The Lewis family had been in the town almost as long as the Strangeworths, but the day young Lewis left high school and went to work in the grocery, Miss Strangeworth had stopped calling him Tommy and started calling him Mr. Lewis. And he had stopped calling her Addie and started calling her Miss Strangeworth.
Yeah, but they're the same age. They went to school together. They were classmates and friends. And then,
yeah.
Can you imagine how off-putting that would be, that somebody that you thought you knew your whole life and were kind of friends with, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, they adopt this super formal way of addressing you and have like just stripped away all of that prior relationship.
Yes, and I love how she ends a paragraph too when she says they had been in high school together and had gone to picnics together and to high school dances and basketball games, but now Mr. Lewis was behind the counter in the grocery and Miss Strangeworth was living alone in the Strangeworth house on Pleasant Street.
Yeah, which is not a very pleasant street, despite the name.
But it's just like, I just love these little small details that like she always adds in her stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
it sums up small town people so well.
Yeah. And I like, if we get into the meat of what this story is about with the big reveal, is that Miss Strangeworth is writing letters anonymously to her neighbors, accusing them of philandering and assault and thievery and just all kinds of sordid, nasty things. There are a teenage daughter across the street. So she writes this anonymous letter to the parents about how the boy is presumably, based off of the content of the letter, that Strangeworth is accusing the boy of raping the girl.
Yes.
And so they go on to this big thing about banning the boy from coming over and basically excommunicating him from the family. But you don't know all of this initially, and then later on you can reflect back onto it. It's like when she goes into this grocery store and she sees that the woman's hand is shaking when she writes out her check, and Lewis looks tired. It's like, well, yeah, no fucking shit, they're tired and shaky. You got the one lady, you sent her a letter about how her husband killed his first wife, and don't you wonder when this is going to happen to you? Put the pieces together, lady.
Yep.
You're writing a letter to this other worried mother who, with a newborn, about how her child is just slow and dim-witted and you should have never had children and you're a horrible parent, and it's just, oh my God. And it's like, yeah, she's just wondering, I don't know why they look so tired and off. They're just so strange. It's like, well, yeah, it's because you're a cunt. That's the problem here. You're the problem. You have made these problems for them. You've invented these entire fictions to try and ruin and destroy their lives. And he's got a few bags under his eyes. Sorry.
And she's just literally just using these letters to just turn people against each other.
Yeah.
And she's kind of laughing at all like this pain she's causing other people.
Yeah. She thinks she's doing a really good deed. She's trying to get rid of these evils in town.
Yeah, she's trying to get back at the town.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find.
She's pure poison.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there's a part, and I'm trying to find it, see if I can remember it, where she because she says well, she doesn't care if it's true or not, but there was one part where I think she sees the boy and the lady and the girl, and she's like, oh, maybe I was right for that one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, she sees a couple, and she's like, maybe I'm doing some good deeds with these letters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was when one of them ran out of the house. Either way, it's just so interesting that she's she's just making up these things just to put some questions into people.
Yeah, she's gaslighting an entire neighborhood.
It's so bad.
She's repulsive.
And I just when we get even letters too, they're just so vague where it's have you found out yet? Have you found out yet what they were all laughing about after you left the Bridge Club on Thursday? Or is the wife really always the last to know?
Yes.
Oh.
So yeah,
I hate her. I hate Adelia Stringworth.
And she's really funny about it because she she's got a whole system. She's got this little desk that's locked, and she has different pads of paper and they're
all different colors and
exactly. Pencil.
She shows her writing style too.
Yeah. Yes. So she has this whole system. This is the way she's gonna do it, and it's just her nightly thing.
Big nasty all caps missives that she writes to these people. She's just so fucking mental.
And she just sees it as she sees what these people are doing as evil. And she's fighting back against this evil, but she's really the evil one.
Yeah, she thinks that there's something that everyone else is causing troubles in the town, and she needs to help point it out.
Yes.
But yeah, so she it's she does all. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the one where she talks about the doctors and the slip of a knife. It's just she just has this plan of doing this stuff, and again, Shirley Jackson does a great job of showing us this ritual of she makes dinner and she takes a nap and she goes out to the garden, and then once it's dark enough that people might not recognize her face, she can go to the one mailbox that she can put mail in and nobody will notice that it's from her. And so it's just again this showing of this little ritual she has that just shows this plan. This is something she's been doing and she loves doing it. But she runs into, she doesn't really run into, there's just the group that I'm seeing now the name Linda and the Harris boy, which is the ones that she had kind of already started a rumor about. For some reason, they're hanging out at the mailbox because that's what you do. Post office, that's where they're at.
Yeah, they're using it as a skateboarding park. Which just has to really bite at her nethers. She has got to just really hate these kids they're going to run their skateboards along the concrete and chip the sidewalks, and it's just evil children that she's got to nip in the bud.
This goes with the whole Linda and Dave thing too, because they're talking about I guess the letter, and Linda's you can't come over anymore. My dad's gonna horsewhip you. You have a really dirty mind. And then Miss Strangeworth. I just it was Miss Stringworth sighed and turned away. There was so much evil in people, even in a charming little town like this one. Yeah. There was still so much evil in people.
And she's the evilest of the bunch.
It's she's the evil one. She's the awful person.
Yes. She sees it. It's her town, her people. And
she's keeping her people in mind.
Yes. And then we get the twist of, maybe not really twist, but she drops one of the letters, and so it's Dave. Harris boy's Dave.
Yeah,
that's right. It does say Dave right there. You know what? Side story.
It to Don Crane. Side story.
I was reading this story online, and one of the and I have the book, but we're moving books, and so I couldn't find it. So I was I'll read this online. Whatever. If you are looking for this story and you're reading it online, there's one that's an abridged version of this, and then there's an unabridged version. And I'm realizing I had read the abridged version of it, so I'm like, half the stuff was cut in there. Anyway, so Dave is the boy.
Now I'm wondering, okay, how long is the regular story? Because this was already a really short story. Now I'm wondering if I did the abridged one too or not.
In the book I have, it is like 12 pages.
Okay, so maybe this isn't.
Yeah.
How do you abridge 12 pages? Like,
I don't know. They cut out a lot of stuff. It was only 6 what I found online. It's for anyone listening that was searching for this, that first link is a PDF and it's only 6 pages. That's the version that they cut quite a bit from. Like,
there's already not a lot here.
I know, but I'm looking at a different version and I'm like, oh man, I missed a lot of this stuff. And I'd read it before, so everything you were saying I remembered, but anyway, I don't know how.
So Dave Harris gets the envelope that was dropped for Dawn Crane.
Yes.
And this is when it all unravels for Miss Strangeworth.
Yeah. And Dave, being the good boy that he is like, oh, well, we should just take this letter to Dawn. And
it's going to be good news for Dawn.
It's going to be a check. Nobody really knows why the lady would be sending him a check. But either
it could
way.
be really good news for him. We're going to help out old Dawn Crane.
And actually, there's a nice little quote where the Harris boy, Shirley Jackson calls him the Harris boy, and he says, maybe it's good news for them. Maybe they need something happy tonight too, like us, which just goes right into seeing everybody's getting this bad news all the time. Nobody trusts each other. And so then, the letter goes. Miss Strangeworth never sees what happened. This is the only time that the camera kind of pulls away from her and shows us what's happening outside of her little world. And we get right back into the nice little routine that she has where, she gets up, she puts on clothes. In her mind, she's like, 3 people are getting great news from me.
It's another sunny day in Pleasantville. She wakes up with a nice stretch and a yawn, and the sun's shining. Oh, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
and then she finds one of her letters, and she's like, "Was one of my letters sent back? That makes no sense." And I just love this ending paragraph where it just says, "Miss Strangeworth was a Strangeworth of Pleasant Street. Her hand did not shake as she opened the envelope and unfolded the sheet of green paper. Green paper inside, she began to cry silently for the wickedness of the world when she had read the words, 'Look out at what used to be your roses.'" And then it just ends there.
Yeah. And she did not learn a damn thing from this with that ending.
At least, and that's the great part. And I think
because now she's the victim. These people have been so mean to me. She has learned nothing.
Yeah, but I just love that ending where the hens come home to roost. It's like all the shit she's doing to other people comes back to her.
Not nearly enough for me.
I think that's the magic of this story is it leaves the rest to your imagination because on one hand, she might not have learned anything. On the other hand, the whole town will definitely know very soon of what she's been doing, and she's going to be going through hell. I mean, they already ruined all of her roses, which at the beginning of the story, you find out they were planted by her grandmother and so her mother, and then she's taking care of them. So they've been around forever.
Those roses are literally the only thing she gives a shit about.
Exactly.
And they've ruined them.
And they've ruined them. So
but for me, it's not enough. It's not enough, man. I wanted her to get this letter and open the door and see the entire town with pitchforks and torches and just fucking rioting for her head. I wanted her done. I don't want this one left to my imagination. I wanted this one to really go there and really take care of business, settle some scores.
Shirley Jackson likes to keep things a bit subdued.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not how I would have ended. things.
I think it's a good. That would be nice to see, but I also think it's like we can just picture what's going to happen next.
And that's fine, but I still want to see this whole town in flames and her house burnt to the ground and people dancing on her ashes. That's where I'm at with this story. Like, it was really good right up until the non-ending. Is you just cut up some flowers, that's it. Like, right, you took off the head of a rose. Take off her fucking head. Her head needs to be cut up. Not leave the flowers alone. Who gives a shit about them? Dismember her.
I think she cares about the flowers.
Yeah, you got to think of I think she's 70 or 80.
Yeah,
and so
you can't just wait at this point for natural causes to come along. All right, things need to be rectified. This town is owed some justice. They need to curb stomp this bitch and put an end to her.
So Michael Patrick Hicks' version of the story is she gets crucified in public of everybody.
Right.
Yeah, you're not far off. Yeah, there would have been a giant cars on fire and having her dragged through the flames, wrapped in barbed wire, I think would be a good route to take. Nasty business.
A single purge where it's just a purge against her.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It would be an inverse of the purge. It would just be this entire town against this frail 80-year-old cunt. Wipe her and the Strangeworth land clean off the map. Turn it into a parking lot. Fuck her roses, fuck her flowers, fuck her dead grandfather. Just burn it all to the ground. Raise the ruin. That's all this story needed, was raise and ruin. Salt the earth so that nothing can ever grow there ever again.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Miss Strangeworth never should have made it out of this story alive. That's my opinion.
Here's the thing. She might make it alive, but she didn't make it out alive, mentally, because she's fucking probably broken now that her roses have been destroyed.
Oh, I hope so. That should only be the start. That's just the beginning. If we're going to leave this to my imagination, it's going dark.
But even this type of non-ending, it's this is one of Shirley Jackson's tropes, where she ends it at the moment where you don't get the closure that you want, but your imagination can work long enough to get the closure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm closing shop. This is closing down everything. There's fire, brimstone, and meteors. There's shit happening now.
Even this episode isn't about the lottery, and the lottery always comes to mind with the way she ends that story as well. Where
they're going to feed Miss Strangeworth to a dinosaur pretty soon here. They're going to bring back zombie dinosaurs to feed her to.
Zombie dinosaurs.
That's really what every story needs more of, I think.
Zombie dinosaurs.
Zombie dinosaurs. There was a really good... did you ever hear of that anthology, Prehistoric, from Severed Press?
I've heard of it.
I think it was in that story. There was a really good zombie dinosaur story in there.
I like how it went from Shirley Jackson to zombie dinosaurs.
Yeah, those stories did not leave closure to the imagination, my friends. There was no ambiguity of what was happening.
This is her thing. There was a number of stories in Dark Tales where they kind of end right. She gives you just enough to then think about later. And this one I had read, 6-7 months ago when I was reading Dark Tales, and when we talked about covering the story last week, it was instantly all came back. Obviously, I still need to read it, and I read the wrong version of it, but it's still stuck with me, and just that kind of style and just the whole concept of the story. And it's such, like I said, it's such a satirical story of a small town and the busybody woman.
Yeah.
And the problem is, and it is a good story. Lack of zombie dinosaurs and fire and brimstone aside, I did have a lot of fun with this story. And I think the one thing that really rankled me is that it is very true. Like we all know people like Miss Strangeworth. I have worked with a number of people, men and women, that are so much in this type of character mold, that are just gossiping busybodies that always have to stick their nose into everything that you're doing. My day job, in fact, just recently, we have a very prominent busybody who is not in our office, but she's in our building. So she's got to kind of put herself into every other office's business. She came in wanting to make a copy because she couldn't remember the code for the copy machine. And then she got into this whole tangent about, well, what kind of coffee cups are we ordering? Who's in charge of ordering them? Who can she talk to about getting us to order different types of coffee cups? Even though she doesn't ever use our coffee cups, thank God, because I don't want to see her every day. But, there's just that kind of level, like, people like this who just have to insert themselves into everybody's business and they just feel so poisonous, and they feel so entitled.
Well, so they feel so entitled. They feel so insignificant. They gain significance by making other people feel like shit.
Yes, that's a brilliant point.
Which is exactly what we see with Miss Strangeworth, especially at the beginning of the story. They didn't erect a statue to her grandfather, and no one appreciates what she's done for this town, and she goes in and she tells all the new people all this stuff. So yeah, she doesn't feel this is her only way to make like a difference, is to write these mysterious letters.
I think the insignificance of her life is a great point. There was a thing that leapt out at me, is like when tourists would come through and look at her roses, like she would take a lot of pride in telling them that she's lived in this house, in this town, her entire life. She's never set foot anywhere else. Like, she's never left the town's borders. She's never traveled anywhere. Like, these roses, this house is her life. And she makes it sound like this is some really impressive thing.
Yes.
That there's a lot of nobility to this, that she is this fixture of the town. And all I'm thinking is, that's just really fucking sad.
Yeah.
Like, you've never left the town you've grown up in. You've never seen anything in the world. You've never had a desire to go elsewhere. Like, you've never wanted to see anything else in the world. Like, the world has so much to offer and so many possibilities, and you are just so content to just be stuck in this one spot, ruining everyone else's lives. Like, what a miserable sack of shit you are.
Oh, totally. But I mean, the same thing is like, it is this whole like small town mentality that comes with a lot of our stories. Like, I know I mentioned the lottery earlier, but the whole thing with the lottery is like every year, or even it might even be shorter than a year because reasons, the town holds a lottery. And the mystery of the story is like, you don't know what the lottery is or what this thing is. And all the older people in the town are talking about like how other towns have stopped doing the lottery, and that's wrong because it's tradition, and we need to uphold these traditional rituals and these traditional things. And this whole like small town refusing to like grow or embrace the world that's growing around them. And you see that here as well, where it's just all these people living their small town lives, especially Miss Strangeworth, who's so caught up in their small town life, she has no idea what's happening in the outside world, nor could she give a shit, because she's too busy gaslighting everybody in the town to like fear her and respect her and give her the respect that she feels was not given to her family.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't fucking deserve any. Maybe they were all an entire clan of toxic assholes who didn't deserve any respect whatsoever.
They built the first house in the town.
I don't care.
So
they ought to hang him from the town square. That would have saved everyone a whole lot of trouble.
I think for this one, well, oh my goodness, the Joyce Carol Oates story we covered, and even the Joe Lansdale one, where they kind of were giving us glimpses of those certain times. I think this one is, not outright horror. It's not like otherworldly. There's no monsters depending on your point of view, no monsters in this story, but it's like
She's
a real
monster.
She's a monster.
it's a real horror, and for a couple reasons. I mean, the one, again, the Joyce Carol Oates thing, what I was going to is like, this does show us like a glimpse into that time, and Shirley Jackson probably knew somebody exactly like this. I'm sure if we researched it, we could find that maybe where the impetus of the story came from, but you get a glimpse of what that time was like and what certain people were like, and their need to spread rumors and their need to control things. So you kind of have that. And then you have the other horror, which we don't see, or we only get glimpses of, is, and again, going into the realness of it, is what she's causing in life, what she's causing other people's lives to become. And that is, even again, like if we look at the lottery and the horror of what that is, that's like a real life kind of horror of people getting stoned to death. This is the same, maybe not dying, but there's chance that people, she's ruining lives. And, so that's definitely like, the horror of this is like this young couple that has a child. Are they going to now always be questioning whether their child's slow? And does that mean, considering this is the 50s, what are they going to do to that child? What life is that child now going to live? Or you have the mention of a surgeon accidentally killing somebody, or the mention of a husband cheating on a wife, and that's going to, theoretically end that marriage. So I think I like that that's where this one goes, because as we were all talking, I was thinking about it, and you think about like the other stories we've covered, they've definitely dealt in the darker, deeper horror, maybe not always with a monster, but there was something frightening in there. And this one, might seem a little lighter, even reading it again, where you're like, it's kind of fun and everything that we've kind of said. But if you look at it in the real life side of things, it's like, man, how many lives has she ruined in this town because of what we said? She feels insignificant and she's evil in this certain way. So I really like that she did it this way. Is it lighter than some of the stuff we've covered? Yes, but it's still has enough of a dark edge to it where you're just like, ugh, yes, let's burn this woman.
Yes.
Do all the things Mike said, zombie dinosaurs, evil clown funerals, all of those things to her.
She doesn't even deserve a funeral.
She deserves to be eaten by the spiders in Spiders versus Zombies.
Yeah.
Or Spiders versus Clowns. Clowns versus Spiders.
That's the sequel, Zombies versus Spiders.
Jeff, get on it.
Yeah.
We demand justice, Jeff.
But no, this story, like, again, as Matt said, it's not as dark as all the stuff that we've covered, but there's so much undertones in this story that if your mind starts going, you're like, she's fucked up the lives of all these people. And can they even recover from that? Even though they know that she's writing the letters, the doubt has already been put in their minds about those other people, and can they even recover from like what she put them through?
One thing that I wondered, because it seems like it had to have played at least a little bit of inspiration, was whether or not this was in Stephen King's mind when he wrote Needful Things.
I mean, possibly he is a fan of hers.
Yeah, it seems like there was a bit of a corollary between the two. Kind of similar premises. She's kind of a Leland Gaunt type figure who is manipulating this town and turning everyone against everyone else for her own amusement.
Only Stephen King goes a bit more into it.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, there's that novel is quite a bit longer than this particular short story.
It's a good novel, though.
Oh, it's a fantastic novel. I love it, but a 1,000-page novel versus Shirley Jackson's 12-pager, he adds a little bit more meat.
Right.
Here.
But yeah, I could see that playing in, or definitely there's got to be some inspiration from this, just that concept of messing with different lives. And the fact, like, the one thing that what's interesting is that, like, nobody until the very end, nobody knows it's her.
Right.
They're all just assuming and going around like there's some mysterious person. Maybe they might not even be talking about it. Nobody might know that other people are getting these letters. And so they're just kind of dealing with that by themselves, which again goes in Needful Things. No one really realized what was happening. So yeah, I could see that.
I think if we are buying into the premise that written works are usually in response to other written works, that one novel is a response to another creative's work, then it feels like Needful Things is a response to Shirley Jackson's The Possibility of Evil. And, there is definitely no possibility in either of these works. It is straight up evil.
And one thing I have to say, too, is Shirley Jackson's really good at these, one-sentence punchlines where it just, impacts in just one sentence. They're all throughout the story, but she's just really good at just having one little sentence that's bam.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, even when it comes to, Matt mentioned in the lottery, it's the person who wins the lottery is they get stoned to death. That's kind of the lottery. And the final line of that story is, and then they were upon her.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Which, again, shows she likes to kind of do that. She doesn't, because if I remember correctly, it's been a long time, and we don't actually see the stones get thrown, right?
We do. We see a couple of them get thrown.
Oh. Okay.
Not a lot, but there's a couple of them. But it also mentions, the lottery box is dented and, all these other things that hint that, this is happening. That's all throughout the story. And same with this, once you learn the twist and you go back to the beginning, there's always little hints that's they're afraid of her. Oh, this is happening. And she has all this foreshadowing that's so easy to look over that when you get to the end, it all kind of comes together and you're like, oh, wow, that's where it was going.
Well, and then, yeah, definitely with the other short stories that she's written, Dark Tale specifically, she does a lot of that. And she also, again, plays with the people in towns and if you've read House on, why do I always say it the wrong way? Haunting of Hill House. I always want to say House on Haunted Hill. I don't know what that's movie is.
That's a Vincent Price movie.
Yeah, see? There, I get the two confused. But if you read that, that's another one where a lot of the scares are kind of off page, but it deals with, that kind of time and what people were like at that time and kind of a small town type of thing. Obviously it's not in a town, but the beginning and then just that life of almost busybody type people. So she likes to kind of prod the knife a little on people like that, she actually is a really interesting story. I think just her life in general. I haven't read too much. I think in the intro of the Penguin Classics for either this, maybe it was for Dark Tales. Either way, they talk a little bit about what her life was like. And so she's a really interesting life, and definitely you can see it come out in her works and just some of her humor and dark humor.
And she died really young, too.
Yeah.
She was 48 when she died.
Oh, wow.
That's
sad.
Yeah. But this is a fun story. And, yeah, there's definitely – even just the title, Possibility of Evil, gives you that little twinge of, who has it. At first it's her, and then eventually it's the town.
I think it sounds like anybody can have the possibility of evil.
Exactly.
Just people can have it.
Yes.
It's Shirley Jackson is just one of the best. There's a reason why people hold her up to such high esteem.
Now,
and there's also a reason why a lot of people probably don't like her work that much either. But
and Mike, you read Murder, She Wrote, correct? Or not Murder, She Wrote. Monster, She Wrote.
Oh, Monster, She Wrote. Yes.
You read the Angela Lansbury stories, right?
I'm a big fan of all the Angela Lansburys.
She was like this, wasn't she?
Just like. Not as sardonic or witty, but close.
But in Monster, She Wrote,
yes,
is there...
Very different, by the way.
Yes, very different. Is there stuff... so I haven't read it yet. Is there stuff about Shirley Jackson in there?
Probably. I don't recall offhand. I would have to go back and look. I'm sure if there isn't a section, I'm positive she at least gets name dropped somewhere along the way. I would reckon there is some discussion of her, though.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I'm only bringing that up.
Probably have to be. Monster, She Wrote was kind of a big look at the history of horror and the women involved. So I don't think they would have overlooked Shirley Jackson.
Yeah, I'm assuming that too. I haven't read it. The only reason I'm bringing it up is just because I think that would probably give you a little bit of more background of like exactly what I was about her, and I think it'd give you some kind of contemporary authors that would be similar to her that people would, if you like this story, to also read if you haven't read very much horror, kind of women in horror stuff. So.
And they were really good. Lisa Kroger, and I'm sorry, I forget the name of her co-writer on that book. They were really good about showing you the history. Like, here's who invented the horror genre, here's who invented Gothic horror, and here are the modern day equivalents that you might like. So, yeah, I'm sure that if Shirley Jackson isn't discussed in a historical context, I'm sure she at least gets a mention into the modern equivalents.
So definitely, if you read this and you like it, check that one out to find more stuff. I think was my really rambling, not making sense way of saying that. So.
Well, the good news is that if Miss Strangeworth were real, given when this book were written and her advanced age within the story, the good news is that if she were real now in 2020, she would be dead.
But Mike, if she was real now, she'd be a Star Wars fan on Twitter.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's probably true. Or a comics gator. She'd be big into comics gate.
Yes.
She'd be definitely a Trump voter. I think she would have a red hat, the color of her precious fucking roses.
And she'd be talking all the shit on Twitter, gaslighting everybody.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's so true.
Yeah, thank God she didn't live for the internet. I think we can all agree on that. Toxic wasteland of a human being wrapped in the shell of an elderly woman.
That would be the ultimate horror.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we all agree, like, this is definitely a story we all should check out if you're a fan of horror.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was
If you're a fan of literature, definitely too. Like, even if you like to tiptoe around the horror genre, like, if you like literature, you gotta read Shirley Jackson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was good. And I think if you're a fan of Needful Things like I am, or if you haven't read Needful Things yet, this is a good little teaser for that book, especially if they are kind of written, if the latter was written in response to Shirley Jackson's story. This is a good...
I mean, it very well could have been, because The Shining was written in response to Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah. It feels to me like there is some relationship between the two works.
It's also Shirley Jackson wrote just stories that spoke to people from all different walks of life.
Yeah.
And speaking of stories that speak to people of all different walks of life, I don't know where I was going with that.
Were you going to try and segue a bit into our...
Yeah, then I realized it wouldn't work.
We were going to discuss sticks next week.
Yeah, next week we're discussing
Some people need a stick to walk. Some people have walking sticks.
Next week we're going to be discussing Sticks by Carl Edward Wagner. Have you guys read Sticks or Carl before?
No, this is going to be all new for me. See, like I said earlier, my school sucked, so I did not get to read good things. So this podcast is kind of an education for me.
Yeah.
Sticks is quite the story.
Okay.
It is more along the lines of, like, kind of cosmic horror.
Nice.
It's more along the lines, like, it's in the... If you want to read along with us, you can read it on Project Gutenberg, I believe. You can find it in Stephen Jones' Mammoth Book of Zombies.
Which I just bought for $4 on Kindle. So if you're a U.S. Kindle reader, you get, if you like zombie stories, apparently, it's a Mammoth Book of them.
Tell us how you
also
really
find
feel.
It in the seminal collection, The Dark Descent.
Yes.
And the story is, don't expect it, even if it's in the Mammoth Book of Zombies, don't expect it to be like a zombie story. That would be your traditional zombie story.
Yeah.
Do
you have a year when this was written?
I think it was published in 1974.
Okay.
I can double check. It was published in the early 1970s, I believe.
Okay. I'm trying to think of Ramiro. I think Dawn of the Dead must have predated this, right?
Dawn of the Dead came after this, I believe.
Living Dead?
Well, this was after Living Dead.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think Living Dead was 1968.
Okay. That sounds about right.
Let's see. I'm looking at his short stories right now. This is published in 1974.
Okay.
There you go.
It is more or less like cosmic horror than it is, I'd say, anything else.
So probably don't expect something like The Rising.
Yeah, don't expect zombies that are talking shit to the people they're eating.
No Walking Dead kind of vibes.
Yeah, there's no Rick Grimes cutting off his hands and yelling Carl at people.
Carl! Got stuff and things.
This story is really good. I'm excited to talk about it with you guys.
I'm sorry. I wish Rick Grimes now would have sold propane. I think that would have been a really good crossover.
That would be Walking Dead series number 20.
Yeah, King of the Dead, we could have called it.
Right? Just sitting around in the alley, drinking beer, selling propane to zombies.
Yeah, that would have been awesome, wouldn't it?
So tune in next week for Sticks by Carl Edward Wagner. You can follow me at Rudy53088 on Twitter. Where can I follow you, Mike?
Mike H5856 on the Twitter.
And Matt?
I don't even know how to respond to that.
That's what broke Matt. Unbelievable.
On the Twitter, Brandenburg DM.
You can follow our podcast on Twitter at Into Staring. On the
Check out our little Sam Jackson gifs of him staring.
Yes.
You're into staring in the Twitter.
into staring in the Twitter. Please rate, review us on iTunes.
Be gentle.
Every little bit helps. Just rip the Band-Aid off. Don't be nice about it.
Go crazy.
Any rating helps.
1 star, 5 star, anything in between.
Exactly. And this is Scott Kemper saying, keep on staring.
Busan!
It's Busan, the Bizarre and Weird Fiction Podcast, hosted by me, Mr. Frank. Busan is the showcase podcast of the bizarro fiction genre. And those who write weird and read weird are going to love this podcast, where each week we talk to everyone who is anyone in the bizarre and weird fiction realm. So join us here every Monday, presented exclusively by Project Entertainment Network.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.